It was a few hours later when a strange tone sounded on the portable that Mira was still working with. It was the only thing in the room, and if she was going to be speaking to a bunch of other species in 2 days, she wanted them to understand her. After a few more moments, the tone stopped, and the screen switched to Klarood.
"You have fine-looking air holes, Mira."
Klarood chuckled.
"If you like, you can set the portable back on the stand, and this screen will shift to the main one for the room."
Mira colored briefly. They had spoken enough that she knew he could have a more playful personality. She held the portable out at arm's length instead.
Better?
Klarood made a chuffing sound, which the translator turned into a soft chuckle.
"I wanted to ask, instead of coming piled with food, the 3 species on board the ship tend to only eat 2 larger meals, and you mentioned that yours eats between 2 and 5 meals, depending on the amount of food. We never determined how large is large or how small is small. In a short time, the day crew will be resting, and the truck will be taking over. I know you are not used to our shorter day, so I wanted to see if you were hungry, if we were inadvertently starving you, or if you would like for me to arrange for one of our trick crewmates to bring you a meal later on."
No, the 2 larger meals are fine, and Captain Sisveda left me some water, or as you call it, hydration fluid. I will be perfectly all right until morning.
"If that changes for any reason, use the voice activation and tell it to contact the medical bay. There is always someone here that can answer you."
Thank you. I probably will be heading to bed in a few hours anyway. It was a pretty eventful and tiring day yesterday, after all.
She smiled.
"Yes, I suppose it was."
He made a strange wave with his neck and head, and then the communication ended.
Was that a nonverbal goodbye?
She asked herself aloud. It was a habit she developed a long time ago to either talk to the inanimate or to talk to herself out loud. She had gotten good at keeping it to a minimum while she was around the crew, but being fairly isolated in this room had her back to doing it. She settled back into the seat she was using and continued to add more English to the translator. It would say a word that would get translated into English, and then she would repeat it for the translator. Sometimes, the word it wanted wouldn't translate for her, and she would have to notify the translator. When that happened, it would cycle through a few languages to see if the language used was the issue or not. This happened a few times, and once, the program had to give the definition of a word in order to find the English equivalent. The next morning, Klarood came by with breakfast.
"You look like a Juten juvenile whose spines have not stiffened yet, so they are just everywhere. How has the nest been working for you? Sisveda said that your nests were shaped much differently on your ship."
I've been 2 days without a brush. I think I'm doing rather well with my hair, considering. As to the nest, that should just be the galactic standard everywhere. Best sleep I've ever gotten.
She explained briefly how human beds were shaped and what they were made out of to her knowledge.
"That doesn't sound comfortable at all. How can you snuggle and care for your young properly if you must worry they will fall out?"
Mira chuckled.
We use a special bed for our young called a crib. When they outgrow it, they move to a smaller version of a bed, and then later a normal-sized bed.
"That sounds wasteful."
Most of the time, the cribs can convert to the small bed, and if it's still in good condition, it can get passed to a friend or family member.
"That is less wasteful."
They chatted as they ate.
"The vaccines are already being given to the crew, and I have your vaccine here.
He pulled out a tablet.
You must let this dissolve under your tongue. I have brought mine with me as well. I must warn you they do not taste very good, so I have brought hydration fluid for us both."
Mira took her tablet in hand.
Haven't you and the captain already been carrying anything I have to the rest of the crew and vice versa?
Yes and no. The belts we wear to maintain our own atmospheric conditions help to remove most of the contagions we may accidentally give to each other. We also have air purifiers that clean the air as well. While it is less likely for us to give each other our diseases, it is still possible. So, we kept you contained, and no one was allowed to share mine or the captain's spheres. Are you ready? It will dissolve quickly, so be ready with the hydration fluid.
They both put the tablets under their tongues, made faces at each other until they dissolved, and then drank water until the taste finally disappeared.
That was disgusting, Klarood.
Klarood was shuddering still, and his spines that made up the mohawk shook from his head all the way down to his tail.
I don't know if I should be glad that is not a common occurrence, or sad that I have not gotten used to it by now.
Why haven't you just added a flavor to it?
We can't. We have tried, and we can't. Both real and artificial flavorings cause vaccines to decay and fail.
He gave one last shake and took a steadying breath.
Protocol is to give the vaccine 2 hours, and then we can get you to your ship. I am sure you would like clean clothing and this brush you speak of, and then we can take that tour.
It really only takes 2 hours to be fully vaccinated?
What are you used to?
2 to 4 weeks.
That seems excessive. I'll be back in 2 hours.
2 hours later saw Klarood walking Mira back to her ship. He boarded with her and was fascinated to look at all the strange human things. Mira packed a bag with her clothing and then started to run her brush through her hair.
How strange,
he remarked. Mira chuckled.
Don't you have any species with long hair?
Of course. They just have never groomed it in my presence. It seems a more private thing.
Mira chuckled again, a little louder.
If this is a perverse thing to you, maybe you should turn around or something.
Is it not to your species?
No. In fact, we wear our hair in a lot of different ways. Some are intricate, and so people will make videos showing others how to do the same with their hair.
She worked her hair into a tight bun at the back of her head.
There. Now it won't get in my way.
When she turned back to Klarood, she saw that he had, in fact, turned away. It seemed it was considered fine to have your hair showing, but to groom it in front of another might be considered wrong. That was going to be a weird conversation later. Though perhaps to a species that did not need to care for its weird mohawk thing, grooming in front of another might be considered provocative. Or maybe they were just prudes. She didn't know enough about alien culture to make that determination. After a pit stop at her room to change, Klarood showed her where everything was and explained some features, such as how to tell that a wall had a screen to use if she became lost or needed to talk to someone, and how to activate it. Klarood was explaining about the lights.
This light is fine for our species, but the Treek are nocturnal, as has been mentioned before. Even light this bright would cause them harm. So, if you are walking in a hall and it suddenly becomes dim, it is not a malfunction. It means that a Treek has opened a doorway into the hall, and the ship is accommodating them. If it happens when you are walking, stop, let your eyes adjust, and then continue.
Makes sense.
Unless you are up late, you probably won't see them. Are you ready for another meal?
Yeah, I could eat.
They headed to the dining hall, and it was like in a dream where you go to school, and you enter the building only for everyone to stop what they are doing and stare at you completely silent. It was unnerving. Klarood made some kind of annoyed gesture, and suddenly they were all moving again and talking.
Klarood, that was downright creepy.
They are only curious. They have never seen one of your kind before, and as I said, there has not been a new alien species in a very long time. They will be curious about what foods you choose, what eating aids you will use, what kind of teeth you have, and even the sound of your language will be interesting to them. It's okay to be overwhelmed. We can take food back to your room if you like.
No, it's okay. It was bound to happen sooner or later, right?
Klarood agreed and showed her through the food line, pointing out things she had tried before that she liked as well as foods that her species would not be capable of eating. There was a lot of murmuring when she also added carnivore foods to her tray. At Mira's tense posture at the new mutterings, he reminded her that omnivores were rare. They sat down across from each other, but next to a pair of skeets. Klarood reached over and pressed a few buttons on either side of Mira, and then did it for himself. Opaque, but not solid partitions went up on either side of both of them. They only went up about 1.5 feet and stopped. Mira could pick up a faint buzzing coming from them.
What are those?
She asked, startled.
Their official name is comfort partitions, but we usually refer to them as friendship screens. Skeets, like our table mates, are often discomforted by the meals of Juten, so that friends of different diets can still eat with one another. These screens were created. They block out not only the sight of the food, but there is a feature that causes a humming, you might be able to hear, which stops the smells from spreading over. There is a third screen that can be put up between us, but I don't think that will be necessary.
Mira looked around and noticed all of the areas where the screens were, and that they were not as random as she had thought. They were all where different species were sitting together.
That's a really thoughtful invention.
Yes, I understand that in the beginning of the Federation, ships were either herbivore or carnivore, and on the occasions where they had to be mixed, there were separate dining halls.
Mira felt a strange prickling sensation at the back of her neck. She whipped her head around, and the species at the other table that had been staring at her quickly looked away. Klarood looked up at the movement.
How did you know they were looking at you?
It was a weird prickling sensation that made me feel like I was being watched. Don't you have that kind of sense?
Klarood was taken aback. No one had ever reported having such a sense.
No. Do all humans possess this?
Yes. Maybe not all to the same degree, but there is a weird sensation that happens when we feel we are being watched.
She pointed over to a different direction that was still behind her.
Are they staring?
Klarood was now even more fascinated.
Yes.
Mira was obviously uncomfortable. She gave a small shudder and then bowed her head over her plate as she tried to ignore the stares she knew were directed at her. Klarood looked at the group doing the staring and bristled his spine ridges in a warning. They caught it and quickly looked away. Mira's shoulders relaxed as soon as the stares stopped.
What did you do?
She asked.
That was a Juten warning of a potential attack. We don't tend to have to make good on such a threat, but it was enough to remind them that they were being rude and to find their manners quickly, or that I would be forced to find them for them.
It was as they were heading back to her room that she realized that it was only the skeeks that had been staring and not the Juten. She asked Klarood about it.
My people are among the first that became spacefaring. Not the first, just among them. We host many intergalactic schools, and so Juten are exposed to many different races, much younger than other species. It doesn't mean that my people weren't just as curious about you. It just means that we're better at hiding, that we are also analyzing you. It might also be eye position. We wouldn't have had to turn our heads so much to see you.
I suppose that makes sense.
They were now in her room.
Thank you for the tour.
It was my pleasure. I'll let Captain Sveta know we have finished the tour, and he will be by to let you know what to expect for tomorrow with the Federation Council.